So are you originally from California?
I am not. No, I was originally from Minnesota.
Where in Minnesota?
Zambrona,
Where's that?
southern Minnesota, between Rochester and the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Oh, okay. You want to do the next one, Carter?
Yeah. When did you come to California?
Well, let's see. That was a what year?
Yeah. Or what point in your life?
I think I made a quick stop. I think it was in 1959, 1960. Just a friend of mine decided we wanted to see the West. So we jumped in a 1994 Ford vehicle. And we had a little bit of money, so we started out and we toured every state on the western United States. And as it turned out, we spent a little bit more time in Colorado and Wyoming and California. And as it turned out, my friend landed off in Colorado, and I stayed in California. But we didn't stay, I went back, and then I came back here again. Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about your education, like where you went to school?
Sure, yeah. Kind of a mixed bag, if you will, because when I got out of high school, I didn't have money, and parents couldn't offer any support. So I elected to go to the Marine Corps and did a tour of duty there. And the reason I did that, twofold, because I always, felt as though I wanted the challenge of going through food and just servicing my country. Plus it offered the GI Bill when I got out. Right? So after being discharged, I first went to Brown Engineering and Broadcast Group, and actually got a first-class engineer's license there. It was a class with some heavy math, and eventually. I think I worked in that field for a couple of years. Also, I was still struggling with finances, so I went to MSB, which was the Minnesota School of Business. It's probably the best school that I ever attended, and majored in accounting there. And at the same time, I worked for Piper Jaffray in the afternoons and evenings, part of the evenings. Piper Jaffray is a major brokerage firm, which still is in existence today, and that was their headquarters in downtown Minneapolis. So I got a taste of what brokerage was all about, stocks and bonds and trading. There were 7 partners in it. So that was even more interesting, I think, than business, with just getting that experience. And then after a couple of years there, decided that I wanted to migrate back to California, and knocked on the president's door here and asked for a job. Actually, when I first came out here, we had traveled for several months, and when we got out here, we were out of money, and we had no way of getting back. So I actually went to work for Farmers and Merchants in 1960, with the expectation that I would be leaving in 6 months. All we wanted to do was to get some spare cash so we could have enough gas money to get back to Minnesota. But I was very honest with with Mr. Walker at the time. I said, well, this is temporary. Because I had planned to go back to school. So we came, then, which I did. I went to Brown and went to MSB. Then eventually landed off back here. Went to night school for about 11 and a half years at the local university here. Major in finance, of course. And actually graduated from Pepperdine in finance. It's been a long time when if you don't have the privilege, you don't have the parental support that you folks probably all have, to pay the tuition on the front end, then you have to do things the hard way.
Yeah, sure. I know that you're the CFO of Farmers and Merchants. Were you always interested in banking?
That was really my first real job, I would say. But I think I chose banking simply because of my early experience in broadcast and engineering, because there I actually was a newscaster for a number of years, or a couple of years. And in that position, you have to understand the community. And I quickly, as a young guy, I quickly understood that there were two things that you needed to do if you really wanted to get a hold of the people, the businessmen in the community. And then one was to know the Chamber of Commerce. And the other was the banker, because everything kind of evolved around either the chamber or the local banker. Bankers in the upper Midwest, they were, highly regarded, highly thought, so it was, when I, finally decided that I wanted to work full time, or a permanent position, I chose banking because it was only because I had that experience.
Okay, so we already answered. What kind of challenges did you have to overcome to get where you are today?
Well,
besides the financial.
yeah. To get where I'm at today.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, has a different path towards success. When I joined the bank, I was put on the fast track. Fortunate. I don't know why I was put on the fast track, but I was, right? So quickly, when I first started, I went through teller training, I went through new accounts, and I worked with Ed Johannes down here, who was a very senior lending officer, and got a brief overview of lending, if you will. And then a position opened up in Garden Grove. So I started out here and went to Garden Grove. And fortunately, at that office, I worked for one of the best managers that this bank has ever had. His name was Wes Horton. He was a very smart guy, a very disciplined guy. If you didn't do something right, he let you know about it, really, in pretty firm language. But he was very customer relations oriented. He pounded that into me, and I went through the steps out there. Well, I was out there for a couple years, working operations and installment loans and delinquencies, and got a good taste of what we refer to as platform work. And then as I guess luck would have it, the controller that we had at the bank at the time, we had 4 branches. Martin Cotty decided to retire. Martin Cotty was former controller of Harris Trust in Chicago. Came out here in his retirement years, served. I think he worked here for about 10 years and decided golf was more of his thing, so he retired at about 65. So when Connie retired, they looked for his replacement. And as luck would have it, they chose me. You know, with 2 years of banking experience. So, oh my God, you know. Fortunately, I had, you know, a decent accounting background, and I had a decent math background, you know, so I brought, you know, a few things to the table. But the transition was rather tough because now we're talking about a 65-year-old man, right, that has worked his whole life as a controller with some fairly large banks, you know, Harris and also F&M. And the management decides to replace him with a neophyte like and he looks at me and says, oh my God, you know. So I worked for him for about 2 or 3 weeks is all, right? And he gave me less than an adequate background, you know, to assume the job. So the initial years were rather tough, very long hours. And I didn't mind them. New Year's Eve, when we had to close the books, I was always here until 12, 1, 2. And there were management reports that well, in those days, we wanted to hit the newspapers with our annual report, our statement, the 1st or 2nd of January. Right? We were the first bank that published. So it was important to close the books and to finalize the financial statement. So during that those early years, working very, very long hours was just expected, and I had the discipline to do that, and I had a good team that was under me. They were very experienced. They helped me along. So we got through it.
How old were you when you became
Controller.
yeah?
Well, that came some years later. Actually, I took the position and worked the position, but wasn't named as controller, right? Until probably, I want to say mid-70s. Yeah.
So when you were in school, what kind of sparked your interest in investing in finances?
Probably my upbringing. My dad was a farmer, but he was a good farmer. You know, he had very aggressive goals. As it turned out, he had a very short life because he died when I was 13. I think he was 49. In fact, I know he was 49 of cancer. So he left us at an early age, but he was extremely aggressive and highly leveraged on his staff. I had 2 brothers at the time. One was a pilot in a Korean conflict, and the other was also in the Army as a 155 gunner. So I had 2 brothers that were fighting the war, and my father, who suddenly turned up ill and died, right? Well, that left me. Not the last in the family, but the rest were my sisters. You know, not that interested in milking cows and running a farm. So yes, I did have a hired man because we had a huge dairy farm. But effectively, you know, I made most of the decisions, and many of those decisions were business decisions. You know. In terms of buying livestock and selling livestock and milk and keeping track of all of that. So I had an early taste of finance, even on a dairy farm.
What do you think are some of the biggest challenges for young people today to enter the workforce?
Um, Well, I think there's more competition than certainly when I joined the workforce. I think those graduating today, you know, whether they got a BA or a master's, they're far better educated. I don't know about their commitment. You know, I don't see that today. You know, even my own grandkids, you know, when I talk to them and you know, about their jobs and you know their expectation for the future, you know, they're looking ahead like 2 or 3 years. Well, when I joined F&M, I was a lifer to begin with. Had I stayed in the Marine Corps, I would have been just as dedicated. Because you know I like that stuff, that way of life as well. So, you know, I think with the right education, right focus, if you grasp early what you're interested in, and make that commitment, it shouldn't be difficult to succeed.
I think you just said this, but what advice would you have for young people who have similar interests in going into the accounting or finance field?
What advice would I have?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, certainly you have to properly educate yourself. I've always considered not only accounting, but you know, strong math. That's absolutely imperative. It's really imperative for almost any career that you embark on, I think. So just find the right job and one that you like and one that you're challenged with, and stay with it.
What kind of advice can you offer to people on how to be successful personally and professionally?
Sure. Well, you have to be honest. Honesty ranks very high. Honesty and integrity. And you have to take whatever profession you choose, you have to take that seriously. Because if you don't, then somebody else will. It's going to require patience, probably more patience than you're going to be willing to give initially. Not everyone is going to work 2 years out in the field and come in and take a controller position. That's not going to happen. You have to earn it. You're going to have to go the extra mile, you know, show your boss that you warrant being promoted. I think honesty, integrity, the ability to get along is going to be very important. Frankly, I had to struggle with that a little bit, you know, to begin with, because of my Marine Corps background. I didn't have the patience, you know, and I think patience is something that's really required, as I mentioned, when you're trying to supervise people. So if I had somebody wanted to be, you know, really critical of me at that time, I think they would have probably suggested that maybe I was a little bit too demanding. I wasn't patient enough with those that were under me because I was always very demanding.